Hello Shapers, welcome to the 16th episode of Coffee with Curators. Today, I am thrilled to have a special guest joining us. She is a passionate advocate for gender equality, working at the intersection of gender, entrepreneurship, and cultural heritage. With a background in social science and liberal arts, she has dedicated her career to empowering women and fostering impactful change. She was the curator of Jaipur Hub in India and currently serves as a community champion for the North India and Nepal region of Global Shapers community. It's my pleasure to welcome our inspiring guest, Aastha. Welcome, Aastha, to the Coffee with Curators.
Thank you so much, Gajanan, for having me. Very grateful to you to invite me to this conversation.
Thank you for gracing us with your presence today, Aastha. Your work and commitment to gender equality are truly remarkable, and I am excited to delve into the details. Before we do, could you share a bit about your background and the experience that have shaped your passion for promoting gender equality and social change prior to joining Global Shapers?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for that, Gajanan. That was a rather humbling intro to hear about myself. But I was thinking about it, and I think it all started back in my school. I was privileged enough to attend the one of the first public schools for women in India, which is the Maharani Gayatri Devi Girls' School. And the foundation of the school really started when the Maharani of Jaipur, uh, having a conversation with her husband, who was the Maharaja of Jaipur, and what they really wanted was how to get rid of the parda system in Rajasthan. Uh, and that's how the conversation started. And Maharani said that if you were to give me a school, I can make that a reality in the next few decades to come. But before you know it, that small little conversation turned into the reality, that dream came to fruition. And we happen to have one of the first public schools for women. And I'm so privileged and honored that I happen to attend the institution for 12 years of my school life. And I think the passion really started then, um, because it was always part of the conversation that how privileged we were to be attending school, because a lot of our my grandmothers and great grandmothers at the time would tell us that they hadn't had the opportunity to even attend school or go for higher education, but all of us were going to the schools. And it was really because of my mother and my grandmother that I went to that school in the first place. You will not believe that I actually had to prepare for a year to get admission into the school, because we had to write like a number of entrance tests and interview. And I was all of 5 years old doing all of that preparation to get into that school. So I really owe it to my mother, my grandmother, and without even knowing, so many role models who came along in this journey. Um, uh, all of my jijas, from the school, and Maharani herself. I had the privilege of seeing her come to school, share this vision with all of us of how she started in a very conservative society. Women back in the day were not even stepping out and going to public spaces, right? But opening up a school to educate women was really a bold vision. So listening to some of these conversations really inspired me. And I think I, for the first time, started thinking about these things after I attended the Young India Fellowship program at Ashoka University. And this opportunity came up to establish the Genpact Centre for Women's Leadership. It was then that I realized that this is such a unique and different opportunity as a first work experience that I'm getting. And when they asked me that what has inspired you, or these were the things that came to me without any, just this is so inherent and part of me, and this is what I thought for the first time. And I think that really stayed with me. So that's where the passion came from. but also all of the role models and mentors that I had the opportunity to work with. They also contributed in fueling this passion. Even further, when Global Shapers community came along, then I had the opportunity to work with a lot of socially entrepreneurs in Jaipur and in Rajasthan, and just seeing how over time everything around us is evolving. And in terms of also equity, it continues to inspire me every day. So, yeah, I think that's where it's all stemming from.
It's fascinating. Now let's explore some specific aspect of your journey. As a curator of Jaipur Hub, you are like a COVID curator in 2019. You may have faced numerous hardships and challenges due to COVID, as it was the worldwide problem affecting hubs globally. Could you share some insights on into your role, the challenges you encountered, and how you fostered a culture of engagement and to revive the hub? Additionally, it would be interesting to know how the strength of Global Shapers community supported you during this difficult time.
Yeah, I think to answer that question, I will have to backtrack a little bit to how I ended up joining the community, which is also, I think, an interesting enough story to share with everyone. Uh, so I worked with the Center for Women's Leadership for a few years. And it was around that time I started thinking that I wanted to move back to Jaipur, to my hometown, and spend time with my family. Because there was this realization that right now, where I was in my journey, I could come back easily, spend time with family, my grandmother, and I really started thinking that before my parents start aging, this was just the sweet spot to come back and spend time with them. So that's why I decided to come back to Jaipur, which was supposed to be a shorter stint. Clearly not. I've stayed back since forever. But when I was moving back, I wanted to be part of a community uh, which was similar to the kind of communities I've been part of, during my university days and otherwise. That's really when I started thinking that what do I want to do in Jaipur beyond being with family, work, other things, right? And I stumbled upon Global Shapers community during that time. Some people from the Delhi hub had mentioned it to me, but I was living in Sonipat, which is lived far away from Delhi, so I never actively pursued it. But it so happens that one of the Young India Fellow alums was the current curator of the Jaipur hub, but he wasn't based in India at that time. So it was really like a tough choice for him as well, because they were contemplating shutting down the hub because it wasn't as active. So he was very happy to hear from me that I was moving back to Jaipur and I was interested in joining the hub. And they were in that process of putting a structure together to revive the hub. So when I moved back to Jaipur, it was the three of us who, back in the day with somebody at the headquarters, we had that conversation of, okay, what's your plan for the next year? Because if we want to keep the hub going and running, we need a plan in place, right? It has been dormant for a few years. So that's when my journey with Global Shapers actually started. So which was very interesting because we all got together and started reviving the hub bit by bit, piece by piece. And that has been the most heartwarming experience for me. And that year I was the vice curator. And then the next year I became the curator, which is 2019. And that journey went to 2020 during the COVID, right? But in those 2 years, we were able to build the hub. We were still trying new things, experimenting, experiencing setbacks, many small wins that we were celebrating. So lots of things were happening at that time. And if I may, like by that time, we'd already evolved into some version of a family because we were meeting every week. We were sharing pretty much all of our, space and time over the weekends together. So we were like a very thick group from the beginning. So during the pandemic, I vividly remember when all started, and by that time we'd already done our elections and everything. But when it started, I personally was very overwhelmed as to seeing what's happening around the world. And as excited as we would be, perhaps excited is not the right word, but inclined to contribute as much as we'd like to for pandemic relief work, I took cognizance of the fact that it could burn out and drain a lot of people because this is a very challenging situation. The most overused word of that year, unprecedented times for real, right? Because nobody knew what was happening. I developed a weird obsession of going through that website where they were showing the cases and the death counts, and it would really break my heart every time I would go there. So I remember I sent very late in the night a WhatsApp message on our group saying that, we really need to take this time to ourselves and first look after ourselves and then decide that in what position are we to continue contributing to our projects, continue contributing to the communities that we work with, and take up new initiatives. But we just need to take a quick stock of the situation, which was, again, like, it was such a heartening experience. And I ended up writing a letter to all of the hub members, and everybody responded back to that letter, echoing that we're all feeling, similar things. Some of our were better placed to go out and help in the initiatives. Some of us took the time to ourselves and our families and situation, or just, figuring out work, other challenges in life. But all of us were together supporting each other. I remember when I was at the summit in 2019, I met such incredible people. We ended up making a group of all of the women that I'd met during the summit, and we'd share poetry together. And with the Jaipur Hub, we'd be playing games online, sharing poetry, and then or recipes to the food that they were making, all sorts of things, right? Our personal challenges, our goals that we'd set. And at the same time, some family members or friends needed help, and we started doing that. And slowly, gradually, in like 2 or 3 weeks, we started thinking about our projects and how do we want to best utilize this time given the new situation? How do we adapt ourselves to the changing times and go forward with it? But I think it was really the test of the entire community together all across the globe, but also individual hubs. We fortunately at the Jaipur Hub, we saw varying, engagements throughout this whole journey of, I'd stretch it and say the pandemic really lasted for 3 years. But in those like intense 2 years, we saw some, transitions, very high levels of engagement to low levels of engagement. But one approach that we took was that we were kind to each other and also to the entire ethos of the hub, trying to do the best out of the situation, but also realizing that there are limitations right now. We missed meeting each other in person, but as and when the situation came back to normalcy, we started meeting slowly, gradually, started supporting each other. So overall, as heartbreaking as it was, the entire journey of the pandemic, it gave us insights into having variety of situations. What happens when we are all not doing well, right? How do we support each other? What happens when there are varying intensities of engagement? What happens when we have no projects at hand, right? Because the kind of projects that we were doing, we're not able to do that. How do we pivot the existing work that we've been doing and adapt to the new situation? So there were a lot of insightful things that happened during the pandemic, and many life-changing events as well happened for people around us. So yeah.
So it was only about your curatorship journey, but after that you become the community champion of North India and Nepal region. So it's
Yeah, I
like
got
representing whole Europe by population, or the number of different countries are, we can compare it with like different states of India by population, and all. So you are representing like whole Europe through your as a community champion. So you have engaged with different hubs across different regions, which have different languages, different culture, and all the things. So could you share your experience working with the diverse hubs and like how it has influenced you understanding of creating impactful changes?
Yeah, thanks for asking that and giving a good insight into the numbers. I wouldn't have thought of it myself, but oh wow, I can pat myself for that. But honestly, like I think one really lucky to be in this position, and my predecessor Jaydeep, he's incredible. So I was already filling in big shoes. Uh, but because he's been with the community for so long, and in fact, he was one of the founding members, etc. Um, but the initial few months were a huge learning experience for me as well, because one, it's so excited about the opportunity to work with such a diverse group, right? But it really felt like an extension of the family, because I really took this as I'm now a shaper of different hubs, instead of even thinking about it. And if somebody still asks me like, oh, what's your role with the Global Shapers community? I always end up saying shaper of the Jaipur hub. It doesn't even strike me that, oh, I should now be also saying also the community champion for North India and Nepal, which is really, I've been lucky with this responsibility. But um, I think one of the most beautiful things about diversity in general is that it allows you to get a sneak peek into culture, into people, into, as you were saying, languages, food, so many other things very quickly, right? So I could be talking to Jaipur hub today, and then tomorrow I'm talking to the Kathmandu hub, and then the Lucknow hub, and diversity of projects, diversity of people, and so there were two things that happened. One was, of course, at the outset, it looks like, oh, we are all so different because we come from different kind of territories, regions, cities, etc. Uh, but if you were to dive a little bit deeper, you also realize that there are so many similarities, in terms of the kind of vision we have for our hub, the kind of work we want to do within the hubs and within the cities, the kind of challenges that we are facing in the community in general at the more macro level, but also at the micro level, at the hub level. Um, so you feel that we're all sailing in the same boat, and we all need to come up with innovative ideas to solve these challenges. Uh, and I think that how I perceive my role is that how do I, at best take learnings from each individual and each hub as a whole, and share it as much as I can with the other hubs, right? So, for example, last year we opened up or the year before that actually, uh, the Srinagar hub, and they were just being onboarded when I took on the role, and now we have another hub in the region, which is the Jammu hub that has come up. And we're already seeing so much like collaboration happening between them. But that's a completely different region from what we see in Rajasthan or we would see in UP, right? So the challenges there, or the kind of conversation or the kind of priorities or the kind of projects that say the Srinagar hub or the Jammu hub wants to do, um, look very different from what we would want to do, say, in a city like Delhi or Noida, for that matter. And that is just the most beautiful part of everything, right? You're engaging at such a deep level with the ethos of the city, and young people totally charged at changing the narratives of their own cities. That is, I think, the most beautiful part. And hopefully, in my role, one of the things that I wanted to do last year, or at least like during the first term, was that all of us in the region, how do we come together at least the same baseline level when it comes to the number of hub members we have? Do we have a charter in place? Do we have a recruitment policy in place? Have we thought about what kind of culture do we want to build in our hubs? So we had like individual conversations with the hubs across the region. So when we got back from the annual summit, I scheduled a conversation with all the hubs and really had a more detailed, in-depth conversation with all of them to understand, how they're doing as a hub. And unfortunately, one of the outcomes of the pandemic was also that we were seeing that the engagement levels had gone down. Some hubs are also like probably using a strong word, but broken to some extent. There were some, fault lines there because a lot of people had moved back to their hometowns, working out of home, or were experiencing unfathomable losses, things like that. So it was really to get everybody on the same baseline, at least in the first round of our discussion. And as we grow as a community, we need more and more, as flexible as it should be, a little bit of structure in place so that it keeps us all going in some direction, or we have some direction with us where we know where we are headed. We at least know, okay, there's a charter to abide by, there's a recruitment policy, this is how we contribute as shapers, this is what project is, this is what an event is. At least we have a common understanding of the things that we want to do, and then really blend it with the local issues that we want to work on, or as they say, the global issues, globalized issues, but from a local context that we want to solve and partake in and design our projects there. So it has been an accelerated learning experience for me personally. So yeah, I hope I did justice to your question. I went on talking about the region, which is incredible. I think I just got lucky with all the hubs that I have in my region. Yeah.
So collaboration and broader perspective are indeed essential elements for driving change. Now let's discuss South Shape Asia 2023 latest event. As a community champion of Nepal and North India, it is like a great thing for you to like explore different perspective of like global shapers community, and you played an important role also in preparing for this event alongside with the Karen and Kathmandu shapers. So could you share the challenges and expectations you faced, as well as any insights you gained from this experience? And additionally, it would be great if you share some of your best memories from South Shape Asia.
Wow, don't even get me started. It was such an incredible experience. And at the outset, I must say that this in itself was such a humbling and as I said, like, an accelerated learning experience. Planning for Shape South Asia was definitely one of them. I had the absolute honor and privilege to work with Kathmandu Hub, which I don't know where to even start telling you about that, how incredible they are to begin with. But I think, again, I'll backtrack a little bit to say that I first attended Shape South Asia in 2019 as a shaper, and I was the curator of the Jaipur Hub back in the day. And it was after 2019 that, like, for the first time, we were having the Shape events again. So from being a shaper to actually being involved in a little bit of planning, honestly, they did all of the hard work. I was just giving as many inputs as possible, or trying to be as supportive to them as I could be. But I think that whole shift in the perspective, I obviously was able to bring a little bit more insight into what I had seen in Shape South Asia in 2019, where Colombo and Candy Hub, they also did an absolutely incredible job of organizing the event. And also, I think for me, after the annual summit, Shape was really, really special because you are meeting people from your region, right? At the annual summit, sometimes you feel a little bit overwhelmed, or there's just so much happening in those like 2.5, almost 3 days, and you're meeting people from across the world. But in South Asia, I think it was more contextual for me to just understand from different hubs, different people who were attending, that in our region, challenges were unique, the kind of problems we wanted to solve were unique. And culturally, we were also similar and diverse. I feel like being from North India, I could connect more with so many of the the, the Pakistan hubs that were coming, just because we share like similar culture, and at the same time like learning from hubs from different regions of our own country, and then all of South Asia. So I think it was a fortunate time to share some of those learnings with the Kathmandu Hub, and Kathmandu Hub was organizing Shape event for the second time. So they already had a lot of insights, but then the times had changed, right? This was back in 2015, if I'm not wrong, and to 2023, the world has gone through pandemics, wars, and so much has happened in our lifetime, and also a lot of technological revolution that has taken place. So, and the Kathmandu hub itself, there were so many people who had not attended Shape ever. So, I still remember when they were thinking of applying, we did a whole session of how to, write the application. And they were the ones who came up with the theme of climate change, which seemed um, as mindful as possible, and obviously the need of the hour. And slowly, gradually, with a lot of hiccups and setbacks, I will not get into that. It happens, when you're planning for any big event, whether it was to do with dates or really finding out that sweet spot where everybody can travel, things like that, to them coming up with events more app to get everything together, to planning the entire event, to fundraising. I think their strengths as a hub were really highlighted during this event. So trust me, that I was on the other side of like learning more than contributing, because they're just so good with. And I think what I learned from them was also through this process of planning for this big event, even their hub came together and they bonded really well with each other. And I think that is so important when you're building up a culture in the hub, whether you're an existing like a hub that has been around for a few years, or if you're a new hub, or if you're reviving. I think culture is at the center of everything, right? You have to um, really ensure that the culture of the hub, the foundation of the hub is so strong that no matter whether it's the changing leadership, whether it's the changing situation, whether whatever is happening around us doesn't matter, we will still thrive. And that I learned from the Kathmandu hub for sure. They were thriving in every situation possible. And we saw that in action when we were there for Shape South Asia. And I think it has done wonders for especially my region as well. I see a lot of energy just flowing in, a lot of potential conversations for hub collaboration, inspiration from the project showcase that we had, and just the energy in the region is great, because you do need to meet in person, and we were doing that after so many years. And for a lot of people, I think Shape events become very important because you also realize the strength of the community, how wide the community is, the diversity of the community when you get to one of the Shape events or any other events of the Global Shapers community. So I feel like Shapes are very important, and I would encourage everybody who has not had a chance to attend Shape South Asia. We have a lot more Shape events coming up in this year and the coming years. Do consider applying, because it will really give you the gist and the flavor of how powerful the Global Shapers community is.
That sounds incredibly enriching. And Hasta, so I think the next question is one of the most important questions of today's podcast. So as we move forward, I'm interested in hearing your reflections as a community champion. And you have worked to start many new hubs in North India and Nepal region extensively. So what makes hubs and projects really work? And what are the key learnings you have gained through your role? And how do you envision the future of Global Shapers community? I know it is very complex question, but it is one of the most important questions.
Thank you for asking, Gajanan. I will try and do justice to the questions that you've been asking, but particularly to this one, I think I'd break it down. The first one is learnings, right? As I said, one is definitely been such an incredible learning experience for me as an individual, um, and also as a shaper, right? As much as a shaper, as an individual, because you're constantly interacting with many shapers across the region and also globally, right? Uh, all of us community champions and the governing body, we are all also connected, and we keep sharing our learnings and challenges and things like that. So it's also a good opportunity to learn from a lot of different regions across the world. Having said that, what are some of my key learnings is that um, the first one is doing is the most important. Even if it looks as minuscule as it may look or sound like, doing is the most important, right? And till the time you have not done something, or you've not uh, actioned it, then you don't know what's the outcome, right? We can all say, talk about, this is the project that I want to do, this is the kind of culture, these are the people that we want to bring on, but at the same time doing little by little to reach that larger vision is very important. And in this process, no matter how many setbacks you face, or um, how many challenges come through, uh, if you have done something, you will definitely either benefit out of it or you will learn, which I feel like, at least in our region, that is the case. I learned this from so many hubs that they're trying new and different things, they're experimenting, and it also gives us a space to interact with each other, and stay connected, either through different groups that we've made on platforms like WhatsApp or otherwise. It helps us share those learnings, and it's really like a safe space to be able to do what you want to, keeping in mind that you also are responsible for your projects and things like that. And as a shaper, this is what I learned, right? In my journey, also as a shaper curator, there were so many things that back in the day felt like so bold to me, that how can we do this in a city like Jaipur, where it really started with one idea, and then you do one little thing, and then you compound it with two little things, and then it keeps going on, and that it has a ripple effect, right? So whether it's the challenges that you face with recruitment, many hubs were facing that challenge, and as a mandate we had, at least the more mature hubs should have 20 people in their hubs. While that thought could be contested, that why do we need that, right? Why can't we have a range? Why can't we lower it down? Which is fair, but when you're building a global community, after some point, and Global Shapers community has existed for 10 years already, and it's the next decade. So you need to bring in structure. So whenever we try to formalize things, we put in structure. There's also hubs, people hesitate at the beginning, that how are we going to implement these changes? How are we going to get to that number? 10 is also difficult to manage within the hub. We are seeing that people are not as engaged, things like that. But with that resistance, they still, did their level best to do, say, the recruitment as mandated, right? And most of them came out with flying colors, and others learned in the process that, oh, actually, this is working for us in our city. This doesn't work, right? So this is what we need to change. A lot of them, for example, the Lucknow hub came up with a diversity policy in their recruitment. They said that we want to be more mindful in our recruitment policies from the beginning. and keeping that in mind, not just gender diversity, diversity of ideas, diversity of backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds, and things like that. So this was something that they were always careful about, but then they wanted to formalize it. Now that's an experiment, uh, or it could look like an experiment at the beginning, but then once you slowly uh, start getting into it, then you realize, okay, this is something that that worked for us, and these are the practices I could share with other hubs as well. So yeah, I think these are the key learning is to do it. If even if it sounds or looks like a small step in the direction, for me as a in this role, it was important that I made myself available and approachable to the hubs, sharing with them that when I was talking about the baseline, at least getting everybody, that means that you also have to do a little bit of work around awareness, because a lot of hubs were reviving, a lot of hubs had new members. It's always good to do that orientation. So in our orientation calls, we spent a lot of time going through some important documents step by step, like the community charter, um, some of the recruitment policy documents, and uh, what constitutes a project. So I think I also revised a lot of this with the hubs, and I think the hubs also collectively.
It's inspiring to see your dedication and vision for the future, Asta. So beyond your work with global shapers, you have just mentioned you have also engaged with entrepreneurs in Jaipur. So how do you integrate social impact into your work beyond the scope of global shapers? And what are your aspirations in the creating lasting changes in Jaipur or in country or in the world?
Sounds like such a big responsibility already. But if I were to, now that you're asking and I'm reflecting back on my journey, it's been really free flowing, if you will, because I have I have done things and or engaged at least professionally also in line with what has come to me at that point in time, and what has excited me. So, for example, after doing um, my economics degree from Hansraj, I remember when I was contemplating going to the Young India Fellowship for the liberal arts program. It was really new back in the day, and most people hadn't heard of it. Some people were like, "Oh my God, why are you doing this to yourself?" But there was something so charming about the program that really excited me, because I saw that one, they were teaching anywhere between 24 to 28 different courses in a year's time, which sounded so much more exciting to me than just studying a few subjects. And I thought that was the kind of experience that I wanted for myself. And without knowing too much, I just spoke to two of the alums from the program who also happened to be in my hostel, and they definitely encouraged me to apply. um, I did not read too many things. I did not. Then after that, then I said, okay, I don't want to know too much, because if I start indulging myself in knowing too much, too many details, I will just get confused. So let me just go with the flow. As luck would have it, I got into the program, which turned out to be one of the best years of my life. It was an amazing learning experience, kind of friends. That really was one of the most diverse groups I'd ever been part of before the Global Shapers community, and just interacting with people from across disciplines, backgrounds, experiences, in middle of nowhere on a highway in Sonipat. We were really, charged up young people, and that was right after I joined the program right after college, so I had no work experience that time, and it was just like one of those beautiful things that happened to me at the right time. And that's when I got the opportunity to run the Genpact Center for Women's Leadership, which again, I think it wouldn't have come to me if I were not part of that program. And also, as you know, the first work opportunity, as nervous as I was, I remember on the first day thinking that, you know, a little bit of it, you just have to smile your way through and pretend you know it. And in my head, I was like this, but on the table, I was like, yes, 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 of course I know this, I've got this. But as I said, like I've met um, so many people in that during that time in that journey. Many people much older to me. I think I was the youngest ever at whether it's a board meeting, whether it's anything, right? So and also meeting slightly challenging people at the beginning of your career or at the beginning of, you know, when you're in university, etc. That's so critical to your overall learning experience in life, because you understand that how do you want to navigate your life, what are the things you want to stand for, what are your ethics. And I think very early on, it's, you know, at the back of my head, I'd started deciding for myself that these are the things I do not want to do. I did not, and I think I can't with full assurance and confidence say that, okay, these are the things that I want to do. But I definitely know that what are the things I do not want to do. And that learning came from the kind of people, you know, I met. And also how I did not want to be, both as a professional and as an individual, which we continue to learn throughout our life. But early on, I think I again, you know, got too many insights because we were always working with people who were at the peak of their careers, had so much to share all the time. And then deciding to move back to Jaipur was also a decision that I just took in a jiffy, honestly. I didn't overthink it. I didn't um, want to, you know, delve a lot into, okay, what am I going to do next, etc. One of the things that the fellowship and the work experience that I had at the center, and which they say, you know, infamously at the fellowship, is it makes you confidently confused. That you're confused, you don't know, but you're still confident to some extent. What I had with me was um, really robust support from the family in general and the friends and the people that I'd met in this journey. So I was pretty confident that wherever, you know, whichever path I take, I will be able to figure it out at some point, which, you know, were my learnings in the formative years of my experience. And now I want to share a background story of how I got into the startup ecosystem in Rajasthan, which is linked actually to the Global Shapers community. So, if I may, can I share that story? Uh, I'll keep it short. I'll try and keep it short. But so what happened was we were waiting, and I was waiting at one of the places where we would regularly meet for the Global Shapers meeting, which is like an art center in the middle of the city. And I had a habit. Jaipur hadn't grown on to me that much, so I would reach any venue, any meeting, anything at least 20 to 30 minutes in advance. I'm not sure if I've carried that with me, but I had reached that meeting and nobody had come from the hub at that time, and I was early to that meeting. And the people who were sitting next to our table happened to be all like entrepreneurs, and one of them was the current partner and CEO back then of Startup Oasis, now the Center for Innovation, Incubation, and Entrepreneurship, based out of IIM Ahmedabad, and this was like their regional extension. So they were doing work in Rajasthan for 2 years almost by the time I met them. And they were talking about organizing something that they used to call unconference. So a conference which is not your run of the mill kind of conference. It's very unique in how it's structured. It's actually not structured at all. It's free flowing, so it's not conventional conferences. So they were talking about it, and I have no idea for the life of me where I got the courage to just sitting on the next table, I was like, that sounds so interesting. Can I contribute to the ideas or to the conversation you're talking about? And they were so kind. They invited me to the table. We had a good time just talking, and then shapers kept coming in, and then we were, yeah, eventually moved out of that table. But it was so nice, like meeting all of them. And it was very exciting for me because I was learning about startups of different kinds for the first time, and just listening to that conversation was very nice. And Chintan, um, who's the partner at CIE, he happened to message me on one of the social media platforms. And you must have figured I'm barely available on any of the social media platforms, barely sparsely available on anything. But he found me somewhere and he messaged me, and I was not in the country at that time. I had left by then, and I got back after a month and a half, I suppose. And I was like, oh my God, he had messaged me. Basically, that message read that, would you be interested in working on a project with us? Or, just trying to find out, because I'd worked in the CSR and some other things as well. So I said, sure, why not? Because initially the plan was to move back to the center, but I kind of was enjoying my time in Jaipur. So that's when I started working with them. It was really out of chance, out of that one conversation. He was just like, yeah, we'll just discuss the terms. And I was already like consulting with different projects related to the leadership training and development space. That was where I'd started my career. And so I was working with my former colleagues. The plan was to go back with. So I kept like all of these consulting things, and all of the work with the incubator was also so experimental, because we were trying to channelize CSR funding into social enterprises. We were trying to raise awareness about social enterprises to begin with. And Rajasthan was very new in terms of the whole ecosystem in general. It's very entrepreneurial in nature. We have a lot of, it's the business hub for many industries, but startups and social enterprises were still new, and we were getting a lot of government support. So initially, I think the work was so exciting and so new. And I did the same strategy of just nodding my head, yes, I know about it, and I didn't know too much. And I would come back home and read about, oh my God, what is like debt funding, what is VC? But I had very like minimum idea, because I was more into like the social impact space, and whatever I'd learned through my education and years at the center was very different. But they wanted to also tap into that experience, and we designed a lot of programs for women, not just like startup founders, but also women entrepreneurs, so micro and small businesses. So we worked with GIZ on a very extensive program to promote entrepreneurship in Jaipur. So that again became like what, that's where my heart is. Like working with women is where my heart is. Another, I realized where my heart has always lied is with the craft space. So I'm very passionate towards craft in general, and also because Rajasthan is a hub for craft and the work of artisans, etc. And this is something I grew up with, and I feel like I carry that with me wherever I go. So we ended up actually designing programs for entrepreneurs who were working with artisans directly. So we were raising funds for them. We actually got a huge funding from DFID, and we built a whole program around it to support artisans, artisan-led initiatives, and also entrepreneurs who were working with artisans. So everything came together. I feel like, again, all experimental. I just kept nodding to things I didn't know, and I said, "Oh yeah, I'll get this." But then at the same time, it was such a humbling experience, because I was learning from the people who were in that space, and I was so lucky that They trusted me with all of this without even being like from that space. So I had a lot of fun. I continue to, I still engage with them on and off, but due to some health challenges, I had to take a sabbatical that coincided actually with the COVID years. So now I keep it slightly light. I continue to consult in these spaces because again, like I found like my heart is in these spaces. My heart is with women. My heart is with working with young people or with artisans or doing things that involve culture or heritage, whether it's reviving it or working with it. So I found my heart in a few different places. I continue to do that, but at the same time, I found myself getting deeper into my family unit, like the business of construction and real estate. What I'm trying to do within the space is also that all of the learnings, of course, from these years, how do I maybe, again, like focus more on sustainable architecture or thinking about construction from a different lens. So that's like the current focus. And along with that, obviously, Global Shapers community has been an integral part of who I am. And I think it will continue to be forever because I joined the community in my formative years. It so I still remember that somebody had asked like what are you looking for, and I was like I want to be connected to my home again because I'd lived away from Jaipur for so long, and Jaipur Hub seemed to be the sweetest spot to do that, to be connected to home again, to be connected to city again, to be connected to my culture again. Because from what I'd read about the Global Shapers, it was to you have to work around in your city and address the local challenges. And I thought, okay, this is probably the best place to know more about like your peers because everybody by then had moved out of the city. So I was looking for extended family, extended network, extended support, fun, like-minded people, and I found all of them in the Jaipur Hub. And I'm so grateful that I stumbled upon it at the right time, and they are kind to still keep me in the hub. So I owe it to them. Yeah. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah. Your dedication for social impact is truly commendable. So, lastly, before we wrap up this insightful conversation, could you share some stories from your journey within Global Shapers community? Memorable moments or something special happened with you during this whole journey? Any one or two, as you're.
Thank God you put a caveat and said, okay, one or two, because there are gazillion that I can count. In just like the last year, there have been so many incredible experiences, but I think I'll try to club. One of the experiences that I vividly remember is the first time that I'd gone to the annual summit. And of course, there are people coming in from across the world, right? More than 500 in number. And I think at that time they asked the question that how many hours that did you travel to get to Geneva? Right? Some of us were in the category of 16 to 18 hours or 16 to 20 hours. But it kept increasing. There were people who had traveled 40 plus hours to get to Geneva. I remember there were two shapers from Venezuela who were talking about how back in the day it was so difficult that the entire country was in deep crisis, like of all kinds, and they were talking about that. And I remember there was I've forgotten the name of the city that my fellow shaper came from, but her house had been flooded during the same time as the summit was taking place. She was far away from home. Very heartening to see, the kind of support she was getting from everybody. But that was really at the time, or shapers coming from um, not such safe cities, things like that, So when you sit there and realize that you count your privileges, you count so many things that have been given to you, that sometimes you don't even actively think about, right? So whether it was the city I was coming from, whether it was who I was representing, the opportunity to represent and to be there was huge. And I think that like sort of highlighted at that time, just hearing from other people that the kind of challenges and the hardships that everybody around us and around the world they're going through, which sometimes we don't take notes of. So I think that experience very vividly stayed with me. I think I was sitting in the aisle seat and thinking to myself, wow, I can't believe like I'm here amongst the people who have made it here despite their hardships. And from of course, like the projects and all of that, I think many people will talk about it within Jaipur Hub. Again, I think I think I end up only doing experimental stuff, which happened with Jaipur Hub as well. But I have found my tribe in Jaipur and across the world also. So many people that I've traveled with after some of these events, so many friendships, so many connections that I've been able to build in these years, that I can count on as family. Within the Jaipur hub also, like my best of friends in Jaipur, everybody they has some connection to the Global Shapers community. And now when I go to other professional spaces or other events as well, I think they recognize me as, I think, like the Global Shapers community. So they keep asking me, oh, what's happening there? And so it's so nice and it's so heartwarming to see, okay, now more people know about it, more people want to know about it. So we were so like, lucky that we got in at the right time. And I think because these relationships are so important in your life, with they keep you going, they support you, uh, they teach you a lot, you get inspired. There are so many instances which I wouldn't like speak about it loudly within the hub. Also sometimes you don't get the opportunity, but something somebody says is so inspiring, or something somebody is facing, and suddenly everybody is willing to get together and help. And I see that across the region, I see it everywhere happening. Having said that, there is still a long way to go for us. There's a lot to learn. There is a lot that we also need to understand about why we have come together as a community, um, learn about our own privileges, learn about the extent to which we can do work, we can inspire others, and also keep upping our game when it comes to the kind of projects and work we do. So apart from all of the wonderful things that happen in the community, I think we need to start more actively thinking about the kind of work that we want to do within our communities. And also, I think I was talking about it in the earlier part of the conversation, just doing little by little, bit by bit, pieces by pieces, but at the same time, just enlarging like your overall vision of where you want to take your own hub, you yourself as an individual. How do we lift others in the hub, so that they're on the same journey as us. We pull up each other, like, and we go ahead together. But I feel like it's time that we start thinking about the work and how we are contributing to our society or our communities, um, in, if I would say, in a more bold way, in a much like larger fashion, and really thinking that the kind of space we come from, we can really pull up so many resources. We can be more empathetic, sensitive, sensible when it comes to designing our own projects, etc. And we can really do a lot of impactful work. But we are getting, we'll get.
So, thank you, Astha, for sharing your incredible journey, insights, and inspiring stories. Your commitment to gender equality and social change is truly inspiring. Before we conclude, is there anything else you would like to add, or your any message, suggestions, or advice to the new shapers who are
A
just
new
joined or
I feel like a new shaper all the time because there's so many things like changing around us so rapidly, right? Uh, that I always feel like a new shaper. So many. Every time as you progress, like within it's in your own professional space or personal space or say within the hub. Uh, I always think that there's a lot of unlearning that we should constantly engage in, uh, whether it's to, for me, one of the unlearnings was to um, get out of the shell, get out of, how do I say, like, uh, again, as I was talking about, like thinking bold, thinking a little bit more visionary, uh, was not like it wouldn't come as naturally, but as I said, like head nods help. You keep nodding your head. It was very scary, right? Like you're nodding your head to something, saying yeah, I will raise funds for this enterprise, and you know nothing. so it, so you keep saying yes to things, you keep unlearning, you also say no to things that, which is so difficult. I'm still learning how to do that, but saying no to the right things at the right time, really understanding yourself becomes very important, very integral to who you are or who you become in any space that you interact with. uh, what is my message for shapers? Be kind to yourself, first of all, to begin with. Just be really kind to yourself. I'm also learning it the hard way. There have been many instances like where I have not spoken about my own, challenges with, but but slowly, gradually find space where you can share your challenges, your journey. So yeah, be kind to yourself. That's really when you will be able to change your perspective and look at challenges around you from a different perspective. And I just want to add one more thing to it, that at least I feel like it's a reflection for me, and it's something that I've learned in my years of experience, that whenever we are designing an intervention for a community, uh, there are a couple of things that we should keep in mind. And this is something that I remind myself as well. Whenever we're designing a project, an intervention for a community, we should be very mindful that we do not come from a space of saying we know it all and we think that this is the problem that you are facing and this is our solution. I feel the moment you do that, you give yourself that upper hand, uh, yourself, and say that okay, we know it all, we know it what to do, but just take a step back and be more participatory in your approach of really understanding. Of course, the first step is recognizing the problems around you, whether say I remember Srinagar how was talking about the honking situation in the valley, and that's something, that's observation, right? So everything starts with observation. So everything starts with how well you're observing your own city, your own communities, people you work with, etc. And then the second is being sensitive and understanding from that community, from that challenge, that what is the actual problem and how do we design an intervention which is a sustainable, b which can outlive leadership, or which can outlive like the people who start. Don't make yourself indispensable, right? With community intervention, I always think that don't go into a community, design something where the moment you leave, everything falls apart. So that foundation needs to be strong. That foundation, you need to keep building on that foundation. and eventually with community interventions, I always think that you should eventually not be part of it. The communities that you run this project with, or whatever you wish to achieve out of those projects, you should be able to be completely distant from that, the projects or communities, and it still thrives. That's, for me, is the real success, right? And it takes time. It takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of being kind towards yourself, and at the same time, it takes a lot of observation and understanding that if you face setbacks, how do you get yourself back up again and try something new. But in those experiments as well, just be sensitive around the communities that you work with. I think that should sum up my message. But I'd be happy to, I think, whosoever is attending the call right now, just if they have any question, I'd be happy to answer that as well.
Well said, Astha. Thank you once again for joining us on Coffee with Curators and Leaders. To all our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Stay inspired, stay engaged, and together, let's shape a better future. Thank you. See you soon.